Hi, this is Baystate Yankee here. Welcome to my workshop. This is my first workshop tour that I'm doing. This is a workshop set up for folks who don't necessarily build furniture. It's not a workshop that's tens of thousands of dollars were spent on big equipment and the newest thing. And this is simply a two-car garage, and it's set up for a shop or to, here I load things into the vehicle and take them out to jobs out in the field. So it's got to be able to house the cars, particularly in the winter, and at the same time I can set up and use it as a shop if I have to. I think that this is good for typical homeowners who don't necessarily have the cash to dump into big equipment. It certainly worked well for me. I always try to keep cost to a minimum, and in the tools I buy, and obviously my surroundings. But I think it's very homey here. I really enjoy it. I've done it mostly in rough cut wood. It's just fun to be out here. So sit back, have a cup of coffee, and enjoy the video. Thanks. So we'll start here in the corner at what I call the office. This is about 20 square feet of space, and I positioned it specifically in the corner here because it's usually a catch-all in any room like this where you have no windows or doors. I raised the floor up about 3.5 inches and put some insulation underneath. So in the winter, you're not standing on, if you're in there, you're not standing on a cold concrete. It helps a little, but typically I'm not in there that often. The walls are insulated in this, so I could throw a space heater in there, but I haven't done that yet. I didn't like the looks of just plain plywood on the wall, so I did rough cut pine on the bottom. I put a little chair rail in there, and then I did cedar shakes on the upper, just to kind of make it nice looking. This is all leftover material from projects I'd done, mainly sheds. So I had it laying around, and I thought I'd put good use to it. On the walls I have some of my favorite stuff hanging. There's some old wrenches up there that were for square nuts. I picked these up over the years in different batches, so I really wouldn't call it a set, but I thought they were cool. I don't use them, but they're fun to have. This is a unit my son made for me. This is kind of memory to my father who worked for the power company. I have that hanging there, a little plaque on it. Picture is something some co-workers gave me when I left a job. And then I've got some other stuff up here, a stock for a business that my brother sent me. Regretfully, it's not worth anything, but the thought was there. My favorite diner, some other stuff here. This happens to be a roof tile off a Howard Johnson's from Connecticut. There's a meat saw that my uncle gave me. And then up above, I had a cabinet that I was destroying and going to throw it in the dump, and I saved that piece out of it, and I mounted it to the ceiling. And this is where I have my staples and nails for my air guns. I also have some sanding belts up here, and I've got some, what are these? I've got blades for the saber saws, stuff like that gets lost. I wanted to keep it in a safe place. When you come in the door on the left is the bookshelves. I've got how-to books, manuals. I got catalogs that people send me, different things. I keep that here rather than lose them in the house. Then above that, I've got a phone, so I can tell when the IRS is calling, or Microsoft. It's let me know my Windows was messed up. They're calling, so I can always see right on the screen who it is and choose to take the call or not. I've got some chip brushes here. I got rubber gloves, some nails I have to go back down cellar, a speaker for my stereo. I got rope, masks, dust masks, some hearing plugs. I'm not really sure what those light bulbs are doing up there. They don't belong there, but down below I made a small rack to hold some of the nails I use, screws, in this area, but I try to keep it limited to just what I'm using, so I don't have to run down to the hardware place in the basement. And then I have drill bits. These are all drill bits that I've purchased for projects over the years. Usually when I do a customer project, I buy new drill bits. Excuse me, and then I sort them out by size, and I keep them there. Once they're dead, I don't bother grinding them down. I just toss them. But I had them in a big can, and they were getting banged up, and it was difficult to find what I was looking for. So I sorted them all out in the same plastic bins I use for my hardware. Label them, and then they're all set to go. Down the bottom is old school tapes. I have a stereo that calls for those here in this room, and I play them once in a while when I'm out here working. This little devil here is a rack for holding sandpaper for my my orbital sanders, and I fixed this so I can take it with me on jobs. I saw this online, a similar thing. I didn't want to spend a lot of money putting together something nice, because it was just going to be banging around in the vehicle and then out on jobs and maybe get wet, or so I threw this together, and it's not really working for me now because I'm not out on jobs that much anymore. I'm just at home, and I don't have a space for the sizes that typically I would stock, so I have to come up with another solution. But it worked well for a while. This long pole here has a small hook on it, and later I'll show you what I use that for out here in the garage. My ceiling is like 10 feet high, and I will hang things up there, but then I got to get the ladder to reach it. So I use that long pole with a hook on it just to grab stuff to avoid getting on the ladder. Oh, and this is a telescoping magnet for retrieving screws and stuff that you lose on the floor. That works quite well. When you come in the door on the right, I have a really small desk. I keep business cards here. Usually I have a stool in here. I can access the phone. I got my files here. In the files I keep all of my equipment manuals. The book is for the outdoor equipment manuals, but inside, if I can, I keep files for all of my power tools, my indoor power tools. Then when I need something, I need a part, or I gotta figure out how to clean something or take it apart, I can refer to the manual, and then it's, you know, it's just easy to find. They're not lost somewhere in the desk or something. That seems to work pretty well for me. Up above, I've got my stereo. I've got 2 speakers in here in this little room, and then I have 2 other small ones out on the workbench. They don't seem to work as well, but so I just crank it, you know, I can hear it from wherever I am in the shop, you know. And then just some stray stuff up here, keep scrap paper up above, and just got a little light here that I use, and that's about it. So I don't keep much in here. I try to keep it real Spartan-like, just, you know, so I can move around and utilize the space. And I found this neat way to hang my hammers. These are the hammers that I use most often. I made these little wood brackets. You can see it's just out of 2x4 material on a piece of 1x. I laid it down, drew out the diagram, cut it out on the bandsaw, and it keeps my hammers that I use most often right there. It's neat. I never lose the hammer anymore. I was losing hammers. On jobs, I was buying new ones, couldn't find the ones I had. It got ridiculous after a while. I still have some I've never found and no idea where they went, but now that's it. These are the hammers I have, and it seems to work well for me. And speaking of hammers, these are some of the real old ones I picked up over the years, and I don't use them for anything, so I thought I'd use them to decorate the wall. I got them up there. I'm not sure what all of them are for. I think one is a cobbler's one, and one is for jewelers, and maybe there's an upholstery one there, but I think they look nice up there, and it just helps decorate the place. This knee-high sign it's not an original sign. Obviously it's a remake, but it's enameled, heavy metal, and I picked that up somewhere, and I like it. I like the looks of it there. And then a bottle opener, you know, it gets hot here, and every once in a while you need a beverage, and, you know, so there's your bottle opener. These are on the outside of the office. I've got a square here that was my grandfather's. I've got a soldering iron that I got from my dad, and then a handsaw from my dad. I got those up there. There's a lucky horseshoe just in case. It hasn't been working well lately, but maybe in time it'll get going. There's another hammer down there. I picked that up. I was up on 1,000 Islands, and I got the head. The guy tried to tell me it was an antique, but I knew otherwise. But anyway, I bought the head, I put the handle on it, and that's there. And I do use that once in a while. It saves my other hammers if I'm working on rocks. And then this is a pair of tongs. I'm not sure if they're blacksmith tongs. I'm really not sure. It looks like they've been welded at one time, but they're neat looking. So I made a rack for that, and that hangs there. And then there's a piece of black locust on the bottom. I was picking up some firewood, and that was laying there, and I thought it was a cool piece, so I just brought that home and hung it up there. Up above the door, you see another old handsaw. That's neat. I needed a place to store that, so that goes up there. And then over the office, I've got this funky space that's kind of, it's just kind of strange. It's I call it the first attic. It's not really up in the rafters, but I needed to do something with it. So I set up this rack over the office to hold all of my pipe clamps. And as you can see, I've got each clamp measured so I can tell at a glance how wide it opens. So it's very easy to select the one that you need, and it keeps them off the wall, taking up valuable wall space, and puts them overhead. It was real simple to build. I had a plywood deck up there, and I just laid out pieces of 2x4 I cut maybe 2 inches high and 1.5 inches wide, and I just made them longer and longer, and then laid plywood over the top and just filled it all in. And they slide in and out. I do have to get on a ladder to pull them out, but you don't use them that often, so it kind of works for me. And then coming away from the office to the left, I've got these toolboxes. The one on the bottom was a rolling one, and then a couple of smaller ones above it. And these were down in my basement workshop that I showed you on an earlier video. I really didn't want to have to run up and down the stairs to get things like, my socket sets, hacksaws, hand planes, Allen wrenches. So I moved them up here, and I built these racks. Most of the stuff is framed in with 2x3s, and then I faced it with rough cut pine, and I stuck these in here. Now the bottom one, the rolling one, is actually built into place so it can't roll out. So when I'm working on something, I can just come over here and grab what I'm looking for, my files, punches, spade bits. I don't use these often anymore, so I'm temporarily storing all my power cords up here because virtually all of my equipment is corded. I don't have any battery operated items. My batteries go dead, so to me it was an unnecessary expense, so I just do corded ones. I've got some hand planes in here. I got some older planes that I use once in a while. Got a nice little draw knife there. For making spoons, different stuff. Because I never know what I'm going to need for one job to the next. And all of my collection of tools is based entirely on what I needed for different jobs. What's in here? So these are all drill accessories, hole bits. Got some plug cutter set, hacksaw blades, and down the bottom I have is an 8-amp reciprocating saw, and then behind that is a 1/2-inch Black & Decker drill that I think I've used twice, but I needed it. So up above I've got that whole cabinet is tap and die tools, cleaning up threads, retreading new holes and stuff like that. To the left of it is my 10-inch. That's a Ryobi folding table saw, and I specifically got that one so I could fit it in the vehicle and go out on jobs. I would prefer a big one, but I don't have the space for it, and this seems to work really well right now, so I'm going to kind of go with that. When that dies, I get another one to fit in the space, and then that'll be that. Above it is a dual compound miter saw, 10-inch Craftsman. That's real handy. That's probably the one I use the most out of all the tools. I pull it out, throw it on the bench, throw it in the vehicle, take it out, go wherever I need to go. Works really well. Needs a cleanup right now, new blade, but that's coming. Above it is it was a rolling microwave rack that I picked up on a job. I had to take it to the dump, and the guy wanted $20 to dump it, and I wasn't going to spend that. That's too Yankee of me. So I had to not do that, so I brought it home, ripped the wheels off it, and I mounted it up here. And now I use it as a cabinet for I've got a couple of orbital sanders up there. I've got a couple of drills. There's a belt sander in there. Then on the top shelf, there's a Dremel kit and some junk. And then there's a saber saw up the very top, and along with a chimney brush for my chimney. So it's working well, and I think it's got a permanent spot here. It doesn't necessarily go along with everything, but it works, so that's what matters the most. These are something called harness hooks. I make these when I'm doing my firewood. I save pieces like this, and I've got a bin of them up here that I have to finish, but I save these. I sand them down, run them through the planer on the back to get them smooth. You attach it, and then you can hang stuff here. A lot of times I have cords hanging there, or maybe my jacket or something. It's an old-time feature you'd find in barns in New England very long time ago when metal for hardware was very expensive, and folks would just make everything out of wood. Well, it was natural to use that branch outlet there for a hook. This section here holds my bandsaw. This is a Wen 10-inch bandsaw with a stand. I only use it a couple times a year. I had a real old one. The thing died. I needed new blades for it. They didn't make the blades anymore. I'd have to have them custom made. It wasn't worth the effort. Well, it was a nice old piece, but it just wasn't worth it. So I got rid of that, and I bought this. Like I said, I use it a couple times a year, but it's good to have here, and I just pull it out. I'd like to have it on a rolling stand. It would make it a little easier, but that hasn't come to pass yet. So, and in the back, I'm hanging my hand saws. Some of these need a cleaning, but they're all usable. One of them is very special to me. There's a miter box saw in the back. This was my grandfather's. Hold it up here. This fits a miter box that's in the basement shop. I've got to clean that up and then maybe even use it. He took good care of it. You can still see some shine here. He passed in the 70s, so you can imagine how long it sat here without being used. But in any case, I have a small rack on the side there on the left, and that's where I hold the specific Allen wrenches and the other parts there for the bandsaw. That way I'm not searching for them. I've got some cords hanging in there, and I've got a face mask, and there's an extra blade in the back. And then up above I've got a bin that holds all these pieces here that need work. And that's just a junk bin basically, but that's what's up in there now. This is my sanding and grinding area. I've got a Rockwell bench sander here. It's got a 6-inch disc on it and a 4-inch belt. I have it hooked up to a shop vac up here by the ceiling. I got a hose run down behind the wall. I got it hooked up on a master switch here. So when I turn it on, the vac goes on as well as the sander. It's really, really loud. I'm not going to turn it on right now. I need to build a baffle around the vacuum up in the ceiling to quiet it down a little bit. And then I've got an old Montgomery Ward's bench grinder. That works really well. Both of these are not tied down because, again, everything has to be mobile. It works well. And I probably need a new stone here, but you know, that could be fixed, Harbor Freight. Underneath the bench, I store my Craftsman joiner. I got this from my brother-in-law. Thank you, Tom. Works really well. I've mounted it on a board so I can move it up to the bench and clamp it down and plane what I have to plane or route, and then put it back where it goes. It does hook up to the vacuum system, so that's helpful. Below is a Ryobi electric log splitter. It can handle a pretty good piece, does a really good job. I got this from another brother-in-law, thank you, Jim. And this thing, I like it because I can run it in the garage in the winter. There are no fumes, it's quiet, the neighbors don't even know I have it. And if I get a piece too big for the stove, I can just, you know, pull this out and split it up and be done with it. Up above, I've got all my measuring and marking equipment. I've got several long steel rules. There's a 6 foot, 4 foot, a 3 foot. I've got my levels, tri-squares, speed squares. I've got chalk lines up here, extra chalk. Okay, the only odd thing here I think would be this tire iron, but I had no place to put it, so I put it up there. As you can see from the dust, it hasn't been used in a long time, but and then I got this thing, bought that at Home Depot. It's supposed to cure everything that's wrong with you. I've used it. I followed the instructions. It works like it says it will, but it's just an awful lot of work to put a line on a board. And then you got to carry it around all day. So after the first day of using it, I brought it home and I found a place for it right up here. It looks nice, but as far as I'm concerned, it's totally useless. It can do, this can do everything that can do. So, and then the cans of pencils. You've probably seen a few of these around the shop. My son come over here one day to work and couldn't find a pencil, and I heard about it for a week. So I positioned 4 or 5 cans of pencils around the shop just to satisfy him and keep him quiet. And it's done the job. It keeps him quiet. So. Next to this setup, I've got the open space. This is where the planks for the bench go. When I break it down, I put it in here so I can bring the car in. It holds the planks quite well, and then I can throw in some extra lumber if I pick it up, you know. The last bin is the trash and recyclables. This sits here right next to the door where I can back my car in, load it up, and go. I don't have to search around for everything. Above that little sign there's a car jack up there. There's some rope. I've got some a bin for collecting oil, the ash bucket, and then above that, above the rail for the door, there's a shelf, and that's my screen repair stuff. There's extra screen up there and spline and the tools. It's not something I use a lot, so I keep it up there out of the way and never gets lost. And that's it for this side. Now to the right of the office is my workbench. I keep a lot of stuff in here. I've got my air compressor underneath. I've got the hose running from it. It goes behind the wall and it goes up overhead, and I have a retractable hose up there that it's hooked to. I can go anywhere in the garage and some places in the driveway with that. To the right of the green stamp sign, you see what I call a garage for the benchtop scroll saw. That's a Ryobi benchtop, and I've got that on a board. I could attach that to the bench and, you know, clamp it down. I've got my ever-present can of string up there, which I use frequently. I have a 2-man wood saw up there. I would say it's an antique. It's got there's a sheath that goes with it, the wood piece, and it's got the old leather straps on it. That hangs up there. I got my cut off pieces of wood and such up above. I need a small ladder to get to that, but I don't use them that often, so they sit up there. The black cans, those are gallon paint cans. They come in plastic now. So once I finish with them, you know, being a Yankee, you got to save these things. So I clean them out, and then I take a pair of pliers and pull the metal ring off the top of it. So they still have the handle. It's a solid bucket, and I can use those in the garden or for cleaning or doing whatever. And then when they get really bad, I can just toss them. Back down below, I've got, like I said, the air compressor. I've got a skill saw and a case there. I've got my extra 100-foot cord. I've got a, I think that's a 14-gallon rigid vacuum. I have that hooked up to the hose, so I can go anywhere in the shop and hook up to any of the pieces of machinery and just run it as I need it. Rather than put up piping and everything. You know, that was just cost effective to work better this way. That other block there is something I built for chopping kindling wood or smaller pieces of firewood in the winter. I pull that out and put it right at the end wall there, and then I can just sit on a small stool and chop what I have to chop. On the bench, I've got my Delta drill press. Again, that's not bolted down, so it's mobile. And then a vise, a piece of flat steel for banging on. I've got a lot of my wrenches up there. I've got over here my SAEs, and I've got screwdrivers, drill bits. There's my speakers up there. And then I use these magnet bars so I can grab stuff, you know, right, the stuff I use the most, I can grab right there. There's another bar there. They seem to work really well. Hearing protection. All of my lighting out here is utilizing, excuse me, utilizing these. They're handy. I can clip them anywhere, and, you know, I don't have to have permanent lighting set up in places. My speed wrenches for hex. There's some star bit drivers, clippers. I got ball peen hammers there. I got, I'll throw some light over here. These are my metric wrenches. I don't use that often, but and then to the right of the drill press are the small clamps. This is the best place for me to keep them. I can reach them quickly from the work floor, and I didn't want to use up a whole wall with it, but that's just the way it was. So they're out of the way, and as you can see, I use C-clamps probably the most. The speed clamps a few times, and the spring clamps I use quite a bit, but I made these little racks, just a piece of board with 2x6 or 2x4 cut out, glued to it, and they just hang there. So at a glance, I can see what size they are and grab it, and that's it. And then, of course, if you've got a place for everything, it gets put back, and you can keep things a little neater. So this is working very well for me, and I think I'll leave it alone. And this is to the far right of the workbench. This nifty little spot serves two purposes. In the summer, it holds my snowblower. I fold the handle down after I finish with it and clean it up, and I tuck it in there. So it's in the garage where it's dry. I don't get mice in there. It doesn't get damaged. This unit here is, the snowblower is 11 years old, and it runs like the day it was bought. So I think keeping it inside really helps. Then there's a shelf above it, and there I keep my cushions for outside furniture and such, because we're right next to the door to the to the backyard. So It's a handy place when you're coming in. You can throw the stuff there in the summer. Now in the fall, this shelf comes out. The pieces are all single pieces. They're screwed into the wall. I undo the screws and I attach the flat pieces to the back wall of this bin. The snowblower comes out, and then I use it for firewood in the winter. And I can fill that up, and that means I don't have to go outside for like weeks at a time to get firewood, walk out to the shed. So that's real handy, particularly in a storm. You know, up the tool bench side, right after the snowblower. This is where my ladder storage is. I keep a couple of step ladders here. The long aluminum one I use for accessing the ceiling, attic, and things outside, tree trimming and stuff. Over the back door, you can see the head for the snow rake, and then the actual extension bars are in a shelf right over the top of the door. There's 3 or 4 pieces there, and it expands that snow rake out to 12 feet. Handy in the winter, but when I need to store it, that's where it has to be. So, and then to the right, you will see the paper bag rack. We live in an area that they've outlawed the plastic storage shopping bags, and so now you got to do paper. So I end up with all these paper bags, and we can reuse them, but you got to keep them in a handy spot. So I built this out of scrap wood. It didn't have to be fancy. I didn't have to make it out of exotic woods. I didn't have to paint it, because it's just simply for storage. So here we go. And on the top, you'll see the ever-present scrapers. If you live in New England, you know what they're for. And we only have a couple of months in the year without having to use those things. Snow brushes. And I got, you see the switches there for the inside and outside lights, security lights, and such, motion detectors. And then next to it, I have a big cabinet. This cabinet came out of a kitchen rehab. It went floor to ceiling in a kitchen, and I utilize it for storage. The top has paper goods, and the bottom is an assortment of stuff. Let me open it up here. I'll show you what it is. Okay, on the bottom I have some fertilizers for the garden, and there's gloves, hats, winter gear, and some cleaning brushes, and then oddball stuff. And up top I have storage for paper towels. I keep them out here. It's a lot easier. They take up so much space that, I don't want to use space inside the house for it. And up on the very top, you're going to see egg cartons. We have a lot of them. And no, we don't raise chickens. I collect these, and we use them for starting our wood fires in the stove. We don't run our stove all night long, as it's just simply not needed. So every morning I throw an egg carton in there, some kindling wood, get the fire going, then I can load the stove. I'll go through between 200 and 250 every winter, and I never run out. Family and friends keep handing them in, and This next unit is a bookshelf that we used to use, and when we had no longer a need for it, we moved it out here, and I set it up on the cement edge of the foundation so it's off the floor, never gets wet. And I've got like a small air compressor there for tires. I got a come along and some garden tools. It's a handy little bench-like area when you're coming in from outside. You can throw stuff there. Occasionally it gets overfilled, and that's what we got trash barrels for. And then the sign wall. These are signs that I paint in the winter, and when I get them done, I usually bring them up, hang them on the wall, And then occasionally people see them and they want to buy them and they run off with them. But this is all I have left from last winter. Last winter I did 85, and that's basically all I have left right now. It's midsummer when I'm making this tape, so we're at the lowest point. I'll start in the fall working on more, and that's what I use my basement shop for. Then there's the door to inside, door buttons. Oh, and over here in between the garage doors, this little dead space I made into a cabinet for automotive oils. I've got jumper cables up there, a jack, I've got a grease gun, so, I've got antifreeze, sprays, oils, stuff like that. It's a handy place because if you're working on a car, usually the car is right outside that door, or if you're working on a mower or a piece of equipment, you're just inside, so everything is right there for you. Up overhead, I have a retractable electric cord, and that hangs right over where I set up my workbench. So I can just reach up and pull that down, and I can run saws or other equipment that I have set up on the bench. That works very, very well. I can't say enough about that. I've got it plugged into the same outlet where my garage door opener is. And then, as I said, I use the attic for storage. Instead of finishing it off with sheetrock, I have boards, stray boards up there. I hang from the beams. There's some bracket stencils, things that I've made that I hang, I make a stencil out of it and hang it up there. Maybe I use it again, maybe I won't, but, that long yellow rod there is a special snow brush for our solar panels. It's got a foam rubber head, so it won't damage the glass. Very handy, particularly if you got that soft, fluffy snow. I can get out there in the morning and pull that down and start generating electricity quicker. There's more odd stuff up there all this is left over from projects. Once in a while in the spring I'll clean it out. If I think the stuff is dead, I get rid of it, but pretty much it stays up there until I use it. And this is my router table setup. I'm going to do a separate video on this. It is quite involved. The router table is only up here in the shop in the garage in the summer. In the winter, I move it downstairs. Now, I'm no spring chicken, so this is difficult to move. So I devised it so that the three, what look like open shelves on the bottom, that all separates into modules, and I can carry it down cellar and then set it up and then move the table down. And I've got a nice little DeWalt 2¼ horse on that, and occasionally I have to use it remote, so I have the base for it, so I can pull the head out and put it in the base and use that. And I keep my bits down there and all the router accessories. I've also got a Spira cut tool down there, and I've got these. This is my Craig setup. I've got the measuring bars. These are really, really handy when you're setting up the router, table saw, or whatever. You get the precise dimension you want: 1/2 inch, 8 inch, 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, and then I got the pocket hole jig. That's handy, especially working remote. You're building something. Pocket holes are great. Then I have a bin here for my Craig screws, clamp, that kind of stuff. So again, everything has to be mobile, so I can back in, throw it in the car, and then leave. The bench setup is on sawhorses. The planks there go up in the space I showed you. The sawhorses get stacked in the center. In the winter, I only go with 2 sawhorses. The other ones get broke down and put up overhead. So all I have in the floor are a stack of 2 sawhorses and the snow blowers. A car can come in and go. Both cars come in the winter. It's a really nice space. I like it. I think it's set up for my needs. Maybe yours too. I'm not sure, but I like the rusticness of the rough cut wood, the smell of it. It's just really good. So I hope you liked the video, and we'll be having more. I'm gonna do another one on that breakdown of the router table, and I got some other ideas coming. So I hope you watch. Thanks a lot.